and welcome to Dave's 8-Bit Basement. In this video I will be looking at a customer's Yamaha CX5M MSX-1 computer. They have asked me to check the unit and recap it and to make sure it is working okay. As you will see, there is a lot more involved than I was told. As we say in the industry, sit back, strap in, and let's have a look. Here we have the CX5M music computer by Yamaha. These units were used for MIDI keyboards and so forth, and were music orientated for a lot of people, and were a very popular unit back in its time. So these units also come with this is the unit that breaks out to the keyboard, and this is a SFG01 cartridge that came with the unit that's working. There was a second cartridge that came with it that's not working, and the customer said that it looks like someone's had a go at trying to upgrade it or repair it, whereas these units have come in also to have the ROM upgraded in them to the newer version, which is the SFG05, and that'll be a separate video on its own doing those. And if I can get around to it, we'll be looking at trying to repair the one that's not working as well. But this unit, I noticed when I took it out of the box that the video port on the back of it was loose, so I contacted the customer and said to him, did he know this, because I wanted to make sure it wasn't in transit that it happened. And he said yes, no, he did notice it was a bit loose when he had a look at it. And I also asked him, does he have any history on it, because that sort of started ringing alarm bells if that socket is floppy like that, and that it could have been dropped or something like that with the monitor plugged in. And he says he's got no history on this at all, so it's all to be trial and error to see if it's anything there. I'm hoping it's just a fracture of the socket where it goes through the board, and that we can just resolder it and reflow the solder and fix the problem. If not, I should have some sockets floating around to go into it, and if they're not exactly the right one, we can probably get one to fit, which just saves him waiting for me to order some in from overseas, which is why I'm not doing the MIDI units straight away, because the ROMs that go in there to upgrade it are bigger than the ones that are in it, so I've had to order some in from eBay. So they're going to take a little bit of while to come from China, about 4 weeks or so. But for you guys, it probably won't be that long. And we'll get underway in taking this thing apart then. So what we do is we just turn her over. Now there are a few tricks with these machines when you take them apart. These MIDI units are generally in the basin here, and there is a screw that goes through this big hole, and it goes right through here into the top of the keyboard. So just be aware that if you've got one with one of these units in it and it's still got the screw, a lot of them don't over time because people take them out. These aren't of much use unless you're using them for MIDI and keyboards, so if you don't have one, it'll probably just have a blanking unit in there, a plastic unit or something in there. But yeah, you have to take that screw out or you're not going to get it apart. Okay, so that's out, so that's a later one to do. Now on these, the keyboard is screwed in separate to the piece across the back. So there's 3 screws in the front here. We undo those 3 screws, turn it over, and the keyboard has like little hooks in 3 places on it that actually go under the cover. So when you lift the keyboard up, you'll see me, I've got to lift it up on an angle to slide it out, and then gently to one side, because they have a plastic membrane of two sizes that go into a daughter board on the side that actually plugs into the main board. So, and we've got to be careful because they are like a plastic with the carbon on it, and you guys have probably seen some over the years. they break really easy or tear really easy. So, and because it's only carbon on them, you've got to be careful not to wear them too much, or you'll end up fracturing them and causing issues. Alright, so I'll go through and undo the screws. And one thing I will say is that get yourself some of these handy little bins. You can actually buy them in kits from places and that, and they usually the ones that clip and go on the wall. I actually find they're good like this, because then you can put the screws in you need to, and they're stackable. You can put one on top of another on top of another, and I put them to a side, and then you know as you're going through the board which screws are going where. So that's just a handy hint if you want to do it. The other way is you can get little plastic containers. Some of the desserts, like your Aunt Betty's and things like that you heat up in the microwave, they have little round plastic containers too, which are good. And the reason I use these is in the past I put screws on the table, turned around, knocked something, the screws are gone flying, and you can never find the right amount to go back in again. So yeah, this just keeps everything nice and tidy. So anyway, I will carry on, and I'll take all these screws out, and you'll be magic, and I'll be on the other side of the keyboard. Okay guys, yep, I've got the screws out, and as you can see, in a container. One thing I forgot to tell you is that in the back you'll see there's two longer screws. Now the two longer screws is one in this corner over here and one in this corner over here. It's only the two back outer corners that have the longer screws in it, and that helps to keep this back piece down so that it's got a better purchase and it's not going to fall off with the weight, because the keyboard comes under like this and pushes up on it. It helps hold it down a lot better. So I'll put those aside. So now with the keyboard, you just gently rock it up at the front like so, and then it should just clip out, and then we move it aside, and we can get to the cables that are down under here. There's two cables. There's a white one and a clear one. Just be gentle pulling them out, and when you go to take them out, you just rock them side to side gently, and they should just pop out. They're only spring-loaded clips that hold these, and they're on a hardened piece of plastic to go into that channel, so they are quite easy to push in when you go to put them back in. You just don't want to do it too many times, because you're liable to fracture the carbon tracks. So I'm going to get in there. It's a bit awkward to do with you guys with the camera, and get these out there. There, that's it. And those are the plastic tracks I was telling you about. So yeah, as you can see, one's a white one and one is a clear one, but these are hard plastic ends on them for putting in and out of these two tracks that are on the unit itself. So bring it up, you know, they have those header connectors, two header connectors in there that they go into. So now what we do is, then this won't come off completely. There's a power plug down on the board under here, but it also goes to a switch in here, and what this is for, this tells the MSX when there's a cartridge inserted or not, which a lot of MSXs had that option. To have a sensor on it, but a lot of them didn't put it in because it was extra hardware and they didn't really worry about it. But the power cable comes from here, and this metal shield, it has a channel in it that the cable runs through across to this side to where the power connector is. So what we've got to do is we've got to lift this up over to the side so we can then unplug the cable off the board. But before we do that, when we lift it across, we have to undo all the screws holding the shield down so we can get to the board underneath. Alright, so we'll just pop that up there now. As you can see, it's not much, it's just gently sitting there. And down over this corner here is where there's the plug, and this is the cable that goes through under here. You'll see it more when I get the shield off. So we'll get another container to put our screws in. Some people get the electric screwdrivers and that sort of thing, but I'm to the point of, like, it's just more stuff to go wrong, you know, and you've got to charge them up and the battery will go flat, or the batteries don't hold charge, and then you've got to turn around and, you know, if you can get a new battery or build a new battery, which we may look at doing something like that later on. I do actually have a hand spot welder and that, so, and some 18650s we can play around with at some stage and maybe do something along those lines. So right, so all those in another container, and we'll put all those on top of the other one. And as I was saying about these containers, I mean, those are the ones from the base, and then this will just go and just sits in on top like that, and then we put those away. Now I know that that was the first one I took out, this is the second one I took out, so I know on the layers of the board which goes where. Alright, and so now we take this metal shield, you can't lift this straight up. On this metal shield down here, there's 4 little grey tabs. They actually are like a C, and the metal goes in between it. So what you've got to do is you lift this end up gently and slide it forward. So we'll lift that up very gently and slide it forward, and it just comes away. You just hear it go click, and then gently lift up the back, and then that shield comes away. The other thing is underneath here, you'll notice that there's a piece of copper that has some heat compound on it. This will probably be quite dry and needs to be taken off, so a bit of nail polish remover or isopropyl or something like that in a paper towel, clean it all off. And it sits on top of the video processor, because one thing with the MSXs is the video processors did get a bit warm. So what you can do is you can then clean the video processor on the board as well, put some new heatsink compound on when you go to put it back. Okay, but this won't come, this copper piece won't come off, it's actually riveted to this case. Right, so we've got that aside. So now we've got that aside, you can actually see this cable here. Now this big long cable here, that's the power cable. It goes from this board, goes right over to here, and one end comes in and goes to the switch, and then the switch comes back to it, and the other end comes back across. And this is, as I said, it tells the MSX that turn power on to the cartridge slot. There's a cartridge plugged in the top. It doesn't have one for the back, just for the top. So what we do is it's just a 2-pin plug, and they're actually set in such a way they'll only go on and off one way. So we can unplug that one, and we unplug the short one off the board. They are keyed to go only on one way, so you can't muck it up. So that's out of it. So what the customer wants me to do, he's worried that with the age of it, the capacitors could be drying out and going bad. So what I'm going to do is just take this main board out, take the power board out, and down under here is the video board, and that's the one with the video socket that's a bit loose and sloppy. But we've got to take the power board out first, and we undo the 2 screws and unplug it off the board here. Now this plug and the one that goes to the main board from the video one are 2 different styles, so you can't muck them up, and they're keyed to go one way, so you can't muck that up either. Alright, so we'll just spin this around, and as you can see on the back here, it's got 2 screws in it. And the other weird thing about these is the power plug in them. They're some sort of weird 13-pin DIN socket, and it's like, but they use 12 volts, 5 volts and minus 12 volts. That's all. And it's just multiple connections of the same voltage. And I mean, the way the socket is on this board, and it distributes out through this, and you might be able to see them on here. There's the red, the black. The red is 5 volts, the black is earth, the yellow is 12 volts, and the blue is minus 12 volts. Now your minus 12 volts in these early machines was just for the RAM, because the RAM used to use a minus 12 volt RAM in it. So that was the only reason. And with some of them, it was the video as well, I believe, that used a minus 12 volt as well. So but it wasn't a lot of current. So yeah, But why they had all those, I don't know. Now the other thing I do, this is only like 2 screws that's screwed in the back here to hold this on. So when I take this off, I'm going to put the screws into, because it has the screw holes in the back of this metal plate that goes on there, I'm just going to put them into here so I don't lose them. The other thing is the power switch slides out of the side here. It's got like little keys on the side that slide down, and the whole thing comes out at one piece. So I'm just going to pop the screws back into the end of this so I don't lose them. And because it's only 2 screws, I don't sort of see the sense in putting them into their own container. So yeah, I'll just put them into the back of this unit so I know where they are when I need to go and put them in. So I've screwed them back into the back there. They're not done up tight, they're just in there, so I know they're there. So I'll put that aside. So that's going to have the capacitors done on it. So what I'll do is I'll make a list of what the capacitors are and I'll get them out and replace those. Next one to come out in line is going to be this video unit under here, and that is only 2 screws under here and a plug on here. It does not unplug off this side, it unplugs off the video board. It is actually physically soldered onto the main board. So gently rocking side to side and that'll pop out and come off. And then you got the 2 screws, one here and then one over the back. Now some of these things, they do have weird ways of getting to the screws, and one of them is over here when you go to take the main board out, and this won't physically fit. Even though these are awesome tools, you can get the extenders for them, but I find sometimes they're a little bit tight. So with those, I just use a normal Phillips screwdriver with a magnetic end on it. It's just easier for getting the screws out. So alright, so this is undone, so now we just gently rock it backwards. We have to because the plugs stick out the back of the board. So once we do that, and that is because they're going through the metal shield, so we rock it up so it comes past this piece here, and then we gently bring it back and the unit comes out. So this one's got to have the caps done on it and the video plug looked at, so we'll put that aside. And then what I'm going to do, because this one's only 2, I'm going to put them back into the shield on the bottom. That way I know where they are and I'm not going to lose them. Put those back in there. Right, so now we're up to taking the board out. So this is the one I was telling you about. It goes through the metal shroud here. It's a bit of a, yeah, why they did it like that and they didn't just take this piece of metal up, I've got no idea. But we'll take that one out. And one thing to notice with the baseboards, so I'll put that into another container, is the 2 on the socket for the cartridge coming down from the top. These are 2 different screws, but they're longer. That's how you can tell they're different, is these have to go in here because they have to go through the mount that holds the cartridge socket onto the board, and they are physically longer. I'll bring the container closer later on and you can see the difference between the 2. But they're the only 2 long ones that are on the board. All the others are only just short ones. One and over the back. And then the other 2 we have to undo are the 2 on the location shroud for the side slot where the MIDI unit comes into. This is a metal case. I'll show you when I take it off. It's actually got tapered sides on it which actually guide the socket on the MIDI unit onto the edge connector. So we take these 2 out there, and that's just a metal unit. But as you can see there, it's got these tapered sides on it, and those are, so it actually helps to, when the MIDI unit comes in, it actually helps to guide it. So if you hit the side, it slides over and slides in. So that's what that's for. So we'll put that in with those and put that aside. And that goes on top of the others. So now all this is undone. We should be, I think that was the last one. We should be right for this to come out. Now to take this unit out, it is a little tight getting it up through the back over here, but over this side you got the joystick ports, and they will sometimes have these little plastic caps in them, and they go through and into the joystick port, so it'll actually like lock it in on the side. So pop those off first, and then you gently bring this up on an angle and then slide it off to the side, and then that should come out, and then that's the unit out. And then what we can do is we can stick this one aside. If it's a bit dirty, give it a bit of a clean, and you know, just some universal wipes or something like that, and a handy towel, and get rid of that base. So I mean, I just use like these sorts of things, you know, you can pick them up cheap, and these are just universal antiseptic wipes that I use, and then just some normal old kitchen roll to give it a clean. Use the same when you clean the processors and that, and some isopropyl, or the other thing is a bit of nail polish remover or something like that, just to get it off the top of the processor, and it's nice and clean. So what I'll do now is I'll pause the video for you guys. It'll be seconds. For me it'll probably be about 20 minutes or 10-20 minutes by the time I write down what all the capacitors are and get the ones that I need to replace and that, and get back to you. But for you it'll be no time. So see you shortly. Okay, so I've got the list all done, and I've got the caps all sorted, and I've gone through and desoldered all the old ones, and I've put the new ones in. So what I'm going to do is later on, there are a few tricks and tips to actually unsoldering capacitors and that, and there's some easy ways than the normal way, and especially if you've got heavy ground planes. If you've got a really heavy ground plane and you're fighting with it to try and get something out, there is a few tips and tricks I can show you that, if you have the right gear, makes it really, really easy. And you know, for the sake of $100 or 150 bucks, you need to get yourself some good gear. So anyway, that'll be an up and coming video that I'll do for you guys. I've got a couple of little gems like that are going to be coming up with some bits and pieces, and hopefully you'll enjoy them. And a couple of them are going to be DIY projects, and hopefully you're going to do them at home. So anyway, this is the containers I was telling you about before, the little wee ones from the desserts, you know, like the Aunt Betty's or whatever. So I mean, you give them a clean out, and they're really, really good for chucking stuff in. So what I do is with these, I keep them, I throw all the spent components I've replaced into them, and then in a plastic bag, all these can go back to the customer, and you know, so they can't say, well, what did you replace? And oh, well, how do I know he's replaced them? So I do this so then people know what's been done. Not only that, they can always check the video out and see what was done on the video as well. But anyway, that board's all done now, and all the capacitors are done on that. So I'll put this one aside, and I will get the video board out next to have a look at that. And I did check it out briefly when I was doing the capacitors, and it is fractured on the bottom of that socket, which is really, really good, because the ones I got aren't exactly the right ones for it, and I would have to sort of put them in and probably hot glue it down. They weren't the exact right type for the board, but I could make them fit. So anyway, we'll put this aside and we'll get to the next one, eh? So here's the video board. So I will go through and desolder the capacitors and get it set up and check this video out, and get the capacitors I need for it, and I'll get back to you guys. As in before, it'll be seconds for you, and it's probably going to be about 10 minutes for me. Okay, so there we are done, and yeah, the capacitors are off. And as I thought, yeah, this one's the yellow socket here, and it was around here, it was fractured on the connectors along the back here and that. So yeah, so just a little bit of flux and reheated those, and a little bit of solder, and just got to reflow, and yeah, that's all solid now, it's not going anywhere. So yeah, and they're all solid, so that's all good. And the capacitors are on, and just a funny thing to note is whenever you do this sort of gear, now you look at the size of the capacitors that come out to the ones you put in, and you think, how can that be? But technology marches on, guys. You know, we sort of notice it now with newer newer technology we have to the older stuff, and things are smaller and better quality. Well, in some ways better quality, so yeah, things get smaller. So yeah. So that one's done. So the next one will be the power board, which is only 3 capacitors. So I'll whip through that one and do that one, and I won't bore you with that since it's only 3 capacitors. So yeah. Alright, so I'll get that done, and then we'll get back to you and show you that, and it'll be putting it all back together. So see you in a couple. Yeah, so that's all done. The 3 caps are out of there. I don't think they needed doing, because I mean they're only filtering caps on the power, on the DC power. So I don't think they really needed doing, but the customer wants what the customer wants, so you do what they ask, and that's what I've done. So they can go into the pile to go back to him, and that one's all done now. So it's a matter of putting this whole thing back together and firing her up, and hopefully everything's working for us. So I'll just grab the case and let's get into doing that. Okay, so here we are. It's a case. So I've got the case back now, and we'll go through, and the main board. Now this is the reverse of how we took it out. Now these are the 2 joystick slots that have got to go through the gaps on the side of the case over here. The other thing to remember is that this is the printer port here, and it has these little springy clips on them. So you've got to make sure you can gently squeeze these in to drop down into this gap at the back, because otherwise they'll catch and the board won't go in. So what we do is we just gently go in, settle it down, and what you can do is the mounts for the screws are a little bit longer than they need to be, and you can just gently sit the board on that before the joystick ports go through the hole. So, and then what we can do is just make sure that the printer port clips are not going to get in our way, so we can squeeze those together. Because they're spring loaded, you can squeeze them together, and then the board should just drop down. That's it. So we just double check that they're not caught. No, those are all good. The joystick ports are through, and we just make sure our holes line up. Oh, touched a bit of that. So make sure they all line up, which they all look good. So what we can do is we can get our first set of screws, the one off the top, and this is the one that has the shield in it, and it only goes on one way because of those guides. So we know that the long pieces go across, because it has to for the screw holes to line up. So we grab 2 screws first, and all of these screws, you don't need to really worry about them. They're all the little screws are the same size. As I said, the only ones that are different size are the 2 that go into the cartridge slot. They are the 2 longest. So save you having to sit there and watch me, I'll screw all this in and come back to you when I finish that. Okay, so I'm just finishing up the last couple, and don't forget the 2 that are on the socket here were the longer of the 2, and then there's the one that goes through the back of the bracket over here, which has got that little hole through the metal piece. So now what we do, we get rid of that container and grab our next container and put that ready. That is the video board. So now the video board, when we go to put the video board in, we've got to put it in and rock it down, and that's because it's got to go through the holes in the back as well. So before we do that, don't forget to take our 2 screws out. Screw 1 and screw 2, our 2 mounting screws. So we'll take those out, and we'll make sure the holes line up, put it in, gently drop her in and down, line our holes up. And the 2 screws go in. That's 1. And that's number 2. It didn't have screws at the other end of this when I opened it up, so I'm taking it from the factory, then put in. Well, there's nothing really down that end, and then when the power, you'll see when the power unit goes over, It actually sits on top of the RF unit here. They've actually got like a insulated piece of tape across it, so where the metal sits on it, and that actually holds it down, so you don't need to really worry about that. So then we'll take, this is the power unit. Oh, well, what we'll do is we'll plug in the video board, which then goes into its socket. It only goes one way, and you'll notice that it's got a bend in the cable, and that's so we can pop it out of the way when we go to put the power cable onto the motherboard. So now we'll take the two screws out of the power board, take these out like so, and then when this goes in, you've got to put the switch in first. So when it goes in, so and you'll see when you hold it, the switch will sit the right way to go. If you look at the switch, it has like a little ridge cut into around it, and that's just so it'll slide in, but it won't go anywhere. It actually physically sits in there, and that stays in there when the power board gets screwed into the back. That stops the switch from popping out. So what we can do is then we'll plug the power cord into the motherboard, and again this is a one-way plug. It can't go on any other way. So that, so I'll have to spin this around so I can put these screws into the back. So it's just gently just line up the holes and put the two screws in, just like that. Sometimes one of these might fight you, and you might have to try and get the track running, the thread running in the right way. So, and on this here you'll find the metal shield's got a piece bent over, which is a flat spot. That's for the cable to sit on, and also the power cable that goes over to the switch on the cartridge on this side runs across the top here, and in the metal shield there's actually a channel for that to sit in as well, which I will show you. So right, so all those bits are in there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to sit the metal shield on. I'm going to plug this side piece in, this back piece, and I'm just going to sit the metal shield on so I can put the keyboard, sit the keyboard on just to test it, so in case we've got to take it apart again, it's just going to make life a lot easier than screwing it all together and then unscrewing it all again. So I'll just spin this around, and we'll get the back piece. Okay, and this is the back piece, and it does only go on one way. So that's the plug that goes down into here, and this is the other one that comes across and goes onto the power distribution board. So okay, that's all on there. So then what I'll do is I'm just gently sit that to one side, and I'll put the metal shield on, and this is more than anything for a bit of RF, shielding, and because of the heat sink piece on the bottom of this for the video chip. It shouldn't worry it. It's not going to be on long enough for it to worry. But just remember that this metal piece has got to slide in under these little clips on the side too. But if not, I mean, you can just sit it. You can just sit it there for now, because it's not a major while we're just testing it anyway. Let's make sure the cables are out of the way of screw holes. Put that down, and we'll take the keyboard. Just put it to one side gently, and put the clear one on first. And that goes in the biggest slot. Get it to go down. Make sure you line it up, and then just gently rock it, and it will pop in. and then the same with the smaller front one. Okay, and that one's down too. Right, so gently just sit this down here. We're not gonna be going mad playing Donkey Kong or anything like that, so we're just going to have it all sitting together, and I'll get the power and we'll put the power on it and put some video leads into her when I can find them. Where did I put them? There we go. And I'm just using a set of stereo RCAs, so the audio on this is white in the back of the MSX and the video is yellow, so I'm just plugging the red one into the video because I know that the white one's audio, so I'm not worried about it too much. And I'm sorry guys, I can't show you the screen. I've got the setup for the overhead for showing you what I'm doing, and I don't have another camera at the moment to show you the screen or the soldering station and stuff like that, so at a later stage I'll get a second one and you'll be able to see that, so bear with me for the first couple until something can change with that. But alright, so that's all in there. So what we'll do is now we'll turn her on and turn the power pack on, and we'll turn the unit on, and yep, coming up, and it's got a bit of noise coming up on the screen. Okay, that might be something we're going to have a look at, I think. I'm just wondering if maybe it's the power pack could need a recap. There could be a bit of noise coming through from that. So. Well, that's the end of part one, guys. Nothing too drastic to start with, but it's just starting to get interesting at the end. So come back to part two and let's see what is going on.